And we are joined by Ruben Amaya, Democratic candidate for Maryland House of Delegates, District 10. Ruben, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Oh, great. We are so excited to talk to you.
So, Ruben, why don't you just open up, talk a little bit about how you got involved in politics? I wanted to have you on the show because you are you 21 now? Are you still 20?
So I'm currently 19, but I'll be
19.
But I will be 21 if elected.
I love that. And one of the things that, is a recurring theme on our show, we've had a hard 4 years, Ruben, and we have a lot of listeners.
I feel for you guys.
Who are sort of wondering how they can get involved and make a difference. And I thought that your story was pretty inspiring. So, all right, you're presently 19. Talk to us about how you got involved in politics.
Yeah. So my involvement in politics really stemmed all the way since I was a freshman in high school. And it really stemmed from the fact that when I was seeing a lot of what occurred in the former president and the issues that, really created a divisive attitude amongst both parties, it was something where I just didn't want to sit there and see not just my generation, but even older generations continue to buy into this, where if we disagree on something, that's that. And there can't be engagements, there can't be a compromise. And so I made it my mission to get involved locally, whether it was through planning rallies or town halls with local officials. And a lot of it just stemmed from what was occurring around the nation. In 2018, when what we saw in Parkland, immediately the day after, I set up a local town hall where we invited local county officials, representatives from Cardin's office and other people alike, and we had the whole library packed. And even last year, what we saw around the nation with demands for racial justice, I remember that week I just called my county executive. I said, "Sir, is it okay if I can get this space at the courthouse to do a rally?" He said he gave it the go-ahead, and we had over 150 people attend with local county councilmen and things like that. And later that year in November, we had the SMART Act, which was a major police reform bill passed in our county council. And so a lot of it is just seeing how I can get involved in the community and then turning that into action.
I remember rallies, Thomas. Like, oh man, what a day gone by in terms of.
Ruben is 19 and has already organized more rallies than I have, I think. So,
but so it sounds like that was a pretty positive experience, right? Like that mm-hmm. You were able to. To get folks, and Maryland is a very Democratic state. You mentioned, right. Senator Ben Cardin, right? Like you were able to kind of like get a toehold in with the establishment. How did that transform for you into wanting to run for office?
Yeah, so a lot of it was, now that we were able to turn our activism into action, unfortunately, what we need is change in a faster pace than what we are seeing. The issues that we are seeing in our country, such as the environmental crisis, is not something that can be gambled with in the next 10 years. As I'm sure you both know and your audience knows, this next decade, what we do and how we tackle the climate crisis is crucial in how our future generations are going to tackle it. And that's something you can't gamble with. Our education system, like same thing, and as well as our criminal justice system. And so the reason why I decided to run was because I wasn't comfortable just sitting on my hands, knowing there's a lot more I can do to serve my constituents and serve the people of Maryland. And so that's why I decided to run, because I know that in a representative democracy, the whole point is to listen, to engage, and then act on it. And unfortunately, there are people that just do the listening and that's it, and don't act on it. And I believe, in my opinion, we can't afford that in the next decade or so, where the people of our country and our state just want to see change. They want to know that someone is listening to them and that it is going to act on their grievances and concerns. And unfortunately, we haven't been seeing that too much.
And this is for the House of Delegates race, mm-hmm. And that general election is November of 2022, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So in terms of, as we have folks who are listening, who are thinking about, well, maybe I should get involved, right? Now's a pretty good time, right, to start building that infrastructure.
Right.
Talk to us a little bit about like the nuts and bolts of that process, right? Like of going from, because I was a lot like you. I was politically active back in high school. It's just that high school is a little further in the rearview mirror for me than it is for you. And I often my dream was to be on the Supreme Court. So that really is a lot of like, just sitting and hoping that someone nominates you, which is appearing less likely day by day. But no, like I've also thought about like what it would be like to hold elective office, and particularly back then. Talk to us about the operationalization of going from thinking about running for office to actually like taking the steps. Like what's some of the hard work, boots on the ground stuff that you're doing?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the toughest part is just galvanizing people and trying to get them to buy into what it is you want to do. In our district, it's generally tough because we have 3 incumbents, and so the tough work that I had to do was try to convince a large amount of my constituency to see that you're demanding change, but you aren't seeing it. So, and it ties in with our whole motto, a new way forward, right? Are we going to keep electing the same people who promise the same things, but we see no change? Or would you rather want to go behind a movement that is willing to bring that at the forefront? And so, we started this last summer in June. And a lot of it is really just getting the right people on your team, understanding the intricacies of running for office. It's a lot more than just announcing and you're going, right? It's understanding the finance law, understanding the political dynamics of what you're running in. And pretty soon we'll be starting our ground operations and door knocking and things like that. But it really does take a lot of work than just announcing your run.
Yeah.
Well, I imagine when you're knocking doors, to ask the question I imagine is on a lot of our listeners' minds. When you're knocking doors, I imagine people are going to be wondering, what is a 19-year-old doing running for this spot? What's going to be your response to some skepticism over perhaps your young age relative to maybe what they're used to seeing?
So I'm glad you asked that question, because that is something I do get a lot as a young candidate. And so the answer that I say to this is we constantly elect the same elected officials, right? And as I'm sure you all know, covering our former president, who was, one of our oldest, and not even he could pass proper legislation or behave his own age. And so my answer to that is, leadership has nothing to do with your age, but has everything to do with your maturity and how far you are willing to go to represent your constituents, and how involved you've been in your community. The things that I hate about legislators is they say, I know what's best for you, or I know what you need. No, you don't. You don't have a degree in every field, or you don't understand the livelihoods of that certain family. And so the job that a legislator must do is to listen, engage, empathize, and try to understand their constituency. And so when knocking on doors, that has been the message we've been telling voters. And we've actually gotten a good reaction, because what a lot of people are seeing now is that we need to try to support a different perspective in our political process. And a lot of people have been inspired by these younger generations from the work that they've done. If we really look at the activism from last summer, mainly it was millennials and Gen Zers who were organizing these rallies, organizing these events, which put our representatives on a position where they had to act, right? And so it's really great to see voters now believing in a different pathway, that, you don't have to be 30-something to enact and change. One thing that I can admit is that I'm not here to say I know everything, but what I am here to say is if elected, I will bring the right people to the table, listen to their viewpoints, and then work to enact legislation. And that's what every legislator should admit, but unfortunately they don't. And that's why a lot of things don't get passed.
Well, and Maryland District 10, I mean, you alluded to this earlier with respect to the 3 incumbents, and that's, based on the way in which voting is allocated in Baltimore County in Maryland. But those the incumbents are Democrats, right? Like we're not talking about, you're running against monsters that have aided and abetted
Marjorie Taylor Greene or something.
Right.
Right.
QAnon supporters.
Right.
Is fair to say that, you sort of looked at that situation and said that Maryland is a deep blue state and that we want sort of not just like younger energy, but also sort of more progressive energy in terms of, actually representing kind of where the heart of the Democratic Party, where the people who are volunteering and energized and active, kind of are. Like you mentioned the climate change and other sort of progressive issues. Is that the kind of strategy that you're putting into place?
Yeah. So, in the Democratic Party within Maryland, we have such a strong progressive base. And it's kind of a sad thing where a lot of moderate Democrats, they ride on the coattails of these progressive groups. And then once they're in office, they don't try to engage. They don't try to see the other side of what we can do to enact certain issues. I can say within my district, the three incumbents are generally moderate in certain views, and some have been progressive in other areas. But what we are seeing is that the party is changing towards a more progressive attitude. And that's because, like I mentioned earlier, that we just can't sit here and do nothing. We have to act, and we have to do so in a way that engages our constituents. The progressive base is really good at getting people involved in community activism. And so that's something that our campaign is going to utilize to get people involved in politics, to get them involved in the political process, and try to get them to galvanize behind the issues they care about. And it's also just expanding our voice. Another thing is not only would I be the second youngest elected in state history, but I'd be the first Latino elected in Baltimore County in Maryland. And so it's not just expanding the progressive voice, but also our minority voice. Maryland has such a strong Latino population, and it's growing year after year. And the fact that I'd be the first Latino elected in my county, which is one of the most diverse in the state, not only is it a barrier breaker, but it goes to show how long we have to go to continue to bring all voices to the table. And so what our campaign is really just galvanizing is on that we are here to bring all voices to the table, that we are different because we are going to bring different voices to the platform, to the table when proposing and solving solutions.
You bring up a good point, Ruben, and also there's something that we tend to do. There's a bias that we have as a country, and also a lot of cynical actors on the right say this too. Whenever it's a question of, wow, wouldn't this be exciting if we had, whether it's the first female president in 2016, it would have been, or, whether it's the VP, there's the cynical answer, why are you just voting based on demographic? It should be about qualifications. And I've always thought, like, first off, qualifications is a very nebulous, subjective term when it comes to representative government, because there's no like objective list of qualifications that somebody has, and then that only comes up when it counts against people who haven't typically been elected. It only seems to come up when it counts against women or people of color. But secondly, what the job of a representative is to do is to represent. So like the fact that it's been overwhelmingly white and male and older for so long means that they aren't perhaps representing us as well. Maybe they are less qualified to represent the people than typically they've been thought of being.
Right. And a lot of that is just goes that it has to be reflective of our country.
Yeah.
And I can only speak to the state of Maryland, but Maryland is one of the most diverse states in our country. And, one of the main reasons why I'm running is that it's also that I know that other people are watching, and that, when you could be the first of something, it could possibly inspire a whole different base of people that probably never saw themselves doing that. And so, a lot of the times why people tell me they don't engage in the political process is because Ruben, I don't even see people like me doing what you're doing or doing the things that you're advocating for. And so I tell them, well, that's why we need to expand our diversity within our legislature. And so that's one of the main reasons why I'm running, because I know that if I win, it can hopefully motivate other people to see themselves doing the same thing, not just in political office, but, in the careers that they want to do. And so a lot of it is, it's about expanding our voices, the diversity within who is representing us. And like you mentioned, taking away the notion that there's these set standards for qualifications. And that's why I mentioned that, it has nothing to do with you could have all the experience in the world, but still do a terrible job. But it has everything to do with putting your ego in place and listening to your constituents and empathizing with what they're going through and translating that into legislation as a representative.
Really well said. I like that.
Ruben Amaya, thanks so much for joining us. Inspiring story. We'll definitely be keeping an eye on you. Is there any call to action I know it's not only a national show, it's an international show. So I don't know how many direct constituents we have listening, but probably a few. Is there anything you want to point people to doing if they want to get involved?
Yeah, so if you want to get involved, or you can chip in $5 or $10, we are a grassroots campaign. And you can go to our website at rubenamaya.org, rubenamaya.org. We are entirely grassroots efforts. We aren't taking money from special interests. And we are really trying to set a standard of what politics could be in the future. So, if any of that interests you and you are from our area, go to our website and sign up to volunteer. And if you're not, we would really appreciate you chipping in to help us out, because as you all know, politics, you can't do this without the proper amount of money. So if any of that interests you, we would really appreciate the support. And thank you guys so much for having me on.
Excellent. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much. This is really great. And I think that the message of Obama used to say, don't boo, vote. And I think, right. There's a way to translate that into, don't just angrily tweet, get out there and get active and right. Make a real difference. And I think it's really inspiring that you've put a lot of thought into this, put a lot of effort into it, that you are, kind of organizing for the long run. And I really do wish you all the best, Ruben.
Thank you.